Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Well, there's certainly been a lot of news floating around, and it continues. Deontay Wilder has said he only wants to face Tyson Fury next. And also, indicative pay-per-view figures are out. So it looks like it is going to do more than 300,000 buys in the United States. And bear in mind, that's just the United States. But we'll get to all of that in this video and some thoughts. So we'll start off first with the Daily Mail. So it's quoting Deontay Wilder as saying on Joshua finally coming out of hiding, Wilder said he is getting what he deserves. With regard to Joshua and Hearn, Wilder said they thought they were the only rulers of the heavyweight division. They had 4 months of opportunity. Their egos got the best of them, so let them continue fighting second-tier heavyweights while Fury and I make boxing great again. I do not want any other fight. No one else. On whether Joshua would be a bigger fight, Wilder added, "You thought the first fight with Fury was great. Wow, wait for the second. As for Joshua, maybe me and Tyson will do a trilogy." And Shelley Finkel, he's backed this up as well. We're not even looking at April. After a huge fight on Saturday, May or June is the right time for the right fight, the natural fight against Fury. So that seems to tell you all you need to know about what is the intentions of Deontay Wilder for his next fight. Not interested in Anthony Joshua. He does not want that fight. You've just heard him say that. And I'll just go to a couple of tweets from Mike Coppinger. So he is saying in terms of some of, and this is related stuff, Joshua and Hearn led people on. They said certain things. It could have been me and Joshua. He could have had Luis Ortiz. He could have had Tyson Fury. Their egos got the best of them. That's the same quotes. Deontay Wilder says Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua must have been throwing up seeing all the buzz the fight created. Now you want to come out of hiding because nobody's talking about him no more. I'm done talking about him. I'm excited about Fury. I'm ready for Fury 2. Okay, so the next bit I'll get into in the video is regarding the pay-per-view indicative results. But first, I just want to go back to some thoughts on this news of Deontay Wilder ruling out Anthony Joshua. That sounded very definitive. Shelley Finkel saying they're not interested in April. Deontay Wilder does not want to fight Anthony Joshua next. So I don't know what's happened in the past 24 to 36 hours, but it's a very different sort of take from Deontay Wilder from the post-fight press conference, where he was clearly indicating he was willing to negotiate with Anthony Joshua. He was interested in that fight. He was interested in trying to unify the division and have an undisputed champion. He's always talked about one champion, one face, one name. You know, you've heard him say it all before. But Deontay Wilder has seemingly gone away from that. Maybe they're reading the tea leaves on this one, because since the fight, and the couple of days since, Tyson Fury, his popularity, the stories about Tyson Fury, the controversy around the fight, it's gone global. It is something that the eyes of the world have been on to some extent, you know, be it small stories in mainstream media, but it has been in media across the globe. And Tyson Fury's comeback story, that's obviously a big part of that. And getting knocked down and then sort of almost coming back from the dead, Undertaker style, getting up, surviving the fight, and then drawing with Deontay Wilder in controversial circumstances. And it was controversial. I've seen a lot of people, Deontay Wilder supporters, saying it wasn't a controversial result, but I completely disagree. But that's by the by, because it looks like we're going to get the rematch next. And it looks like it's going to be May or June. Whereabouts? Well, that's obviously the $1 million question. Or in regards of December the 1st, it was the $2 million question, because a site fee was paid by the Staples Center to secure that fight. So you would have to wonder, where are they going to stage this? It's obviously going to come down to money, but a big part of that is they would have been crunching the numbers from the first fight to go, okay, what makes sense? What can we do? What is the likely level of interest going to be in a rematch? And we can get a small indication of this, and going back to Mike Coppinger's tweet. Sources. It's early, but Wilder Fury is tracking at over 300,000 pay-per-view buys. The break-even point was 250,000, I'm told. So a big win for Showtime and PBC. And further up, this is an early estimate for pay-per-view sales in the US. The fight was also featured prominently on digital, including PS4, which could help bring in quite a bit more revenue. So bear in mind, that is the United States figure for the pay-per-view, Showtime pay-per-view, $64.99, and then tack on another $10 for HD, and most people were getting it in HD. So 300,000 buys. Even if we just track that just on the trusty calculator here, 300,000 times $74.99. It's over $22 million in revenue from the United States. And more revenue and that's just 300,000. That doesn't include the live gate, and we're hearing there was just over 17,000 people in the building on the night. Jeremy, one of my subscribers who was there, said it was 60-70% full. The upper tiers, the actual very upper stuff, almost empty or not filled at all in parts. But overall, it looked pretty packed on TV, and that's the sort of what Jeremy was saying as well. But in terms of the UK pay-per-view, well, we don't know about that, but the pay-per-view cost in the United Kingdom, much lower. But say, for example, if it did the same again, 300,000, which might be conservative, actually, it could have been maybe 400,000, 500,000. Vladimir Klitschko and Tyson Fury, that did 500,000 in the UK, and there certainly was a lot of interest from the UK for this fight. But if we did that by £20, that's $6 million, or £6 million, which is about $7 million or so. So that could potentially be, just on these rough estimates, which is sounds like the lower end of the scale here, $30 million or so. And then, you take into account other markets for pay-per-view. Where I was, New Zealand, $35, that all goes into the pot as well. And then you take into other considerations, sponsorships and all sorts of other bits and pieces, advertising, merchandise. Where they can make money on these things, they're always going to, try wring every last cent out of it. But in terms of the headline number, so we're talking somewhere over 300,000, which is being reported. Actually, that's not too bad. It's not the 2.5 million that Deontay Wilder was talking about. I mean, that was always ludicrous and delusional stuff. It was never doing 2.5 million buys. But 300,000, that fits well within the range of Stephen Espinosa's 200,000 to 600,000 buys range. And by the sounds of it, it's tracking over 300,000. So whatever the final number is going to be, it is certainly, it's a decent opening pay-per-view for Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury, big part of it. But you'd have to imagine that after what happened on Saturday night, that a repeat of this event is going to do good things in terms of the bias. You could maybe expect, I would think, this is just me hazarding a guess, that they could potentially, say if they got 300,000 or 350,000 buys, they might be able to look to double that. Maybe that's been conservative, we don't know, but there will be more interest in the rematch for this fight. I think it's just that simple. And that is the fight that most people are looking to right now, going, it's a logical fight. There's some unfinished business here, and it's the fight I actually prefer to see next. I said in another video from earlier today, the Wilder and Joshua fight didn't quite have the same appeal for me as it did prior to the Fury and Wilder fight, just because of everything that went on. But what it does do for Anthony Joshua, and for Deontay Wilder's team, if they just, put this line in the sand, well, we don't have to go away for weeks or months with them talking back and forward through the media, positioning, because a lot of it has been about positioning, making it look like they want the fight, that sort of stuff. We're going to, thankfully, mercifully avoid all that dross. We're not going to get all that sort of turgid crap for weeks on end about who wants what and who's doing what, because at the end of the day, that becomes so tiresome. We just want the fight. And they've drawn this line in the sand and said, actually, April, forget about it. We're going to take this rematch. And that was always on the cards as an option depending on what happened in this fight. And the draw wasn't exactly what people expected, but had either won, they likely would have triggered their rematch clauses, which we understand that they did have. We haven't had the complete, explanation on what those rematch clauses entailed, but the draw seems to have nullified some of that. But it seems there is the willingness for that fight to get made. And Frank Warren, he was talking about writing to the WBC for them to order it. And potentially the WBC, if they can see that there's a will by both sides to have this fight made, maybe they will look to come in with some sort of mandating for the fight, just for the fact that they're going to have to keep Dominic Breazeale at bay. He's been on the sidelines for almost a year as the mandatory challenger. He's waiting patiently for his shot. So the WBC may have to say, actually, we agree, we are going to sanction an immediate rematch. And it sounds like that could be in May or June. Maybe in the UK, maybe it will be Vegas, maybe New York, but you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be wherever makes the most money. As for Anthony Joshua, he had come out and said, look, I challenge you guys, fight me. I want to fight with one of you. I want to become undisputed with Deontay Wilder. I'll fight you, Tyson Fury, when you're ready. He's obviously been sort of frozen out here. Deontay Wilder is not interested. You heard from some of his statements. Very, very dismissive of Joshua. In some ways, acting like he's now the A-side, which I still don't agree with. He's not. But if he can continue to be in big fights with someone like a Tyson Fury, if they have another cracker for the second fight, well, he's certainly, and if he wins that fight, well, he's getting closer to breaking point in terms of a 50-50 split in an undisputed fight. Obviously, if they do have this rematch, certainly the risk for Wilder is he could lose that shot in an Anthony Joshua payday, but judging by some of his comments, that doesn't really seem to be a consideration right now. Obviously, he's banking on a second event doing very well, and that will do very well for all involved. And if the first event is done over 300,000, well, the second event, well, it could likely do much more, maybe even double or so. Who knows? So it really depends how they build it, where they have it, and what the interest level is. And at the moment, there is a high degree of interest in a rematch. And Joshua, well, who's he going to face now? I mean, Wilder keeps saying he's facing second-tier guys, but that kind of sums up most of Deontay Wilder's career, because if he's calling Alexander Povetkin and Joseph Parker second-tier, well, that is, he was facing less than that for most of his championship run. And that's not taking a dig at Wilder, that's just, putting the opponents into an order that makes sense, because Duhaupas, Molina, Spilka, they are not better than Alexander Povetkin or Joseph Parker. That's just my thoughts on that. But in terms of who he could fight, well, the obvious choice is Dillian Whyte, should he beat Derek Chisora. And Derek Chisora, well, that's an option if he wins, but who really wants to see that fight? I don't. There are some other options. Jarrell Miller at Wembley. It kind of seems one fight too soon for Miller, just because he's been fighting Neville Nobodies for 2018. He hasn't been in the sort of fights that he should have been in. He could have had that IBF mandatory spot all sewn up, but he decided to face a rinsed 41-year-old Thomas Adamek. I'm not very high on Miller at the moment, and neither are a lot of other fans by the looks of it. But, once you strip Wilder and Fury away from the mix, it actually starts to look a little bit thinner in terms of viable opponents that could fill a 100,000-seat stadium. Maybe the best option is the Dillian Whyte rematch, but, he's got to beat Derek Chisora. And even then, what if he takes a battering in that fight? Maybe April the 13th will be too soon for him. There's a lot of variables at play here, but Anthony Joshua is being frozen out here by Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Well, Deontay Wilder from these comments, but we'll have to see what Fury says about an immediate rematch. And he says he wanted to go away over Christmas, recalculate and sort of formulate the next steps. His promoter was saying, let's make the rematch, let's make it next. And he may just fall into line with that. And this fight with Wilder, there is some unfinished business, and maybe this is part of what can keep Tyson Fury motivated for the next several months, because with some of the comments that he made into the lead up to this fight, We just didn't know if, one, he'd fight again, and two, if he could stay motivated after whatever the result was, because he said whenever there's a big high, it's always followed by a big low. So if there is a rematch, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good to see, sort of get a little bit of finality from the first fight, because that didn't end in the way that most of us wanted. There was just a sour taste in my mouth. I'm sure there was a sour taste in your mouth, whoever you were supporting. Whoever picked the draw in this, there were a number of people who've been saying they put a few dollars down. They certainly did well for themselves. I actually heard there was some guy that put $500 on the draw. I'm sure that was paying big money. Anyway, I'll wrap this up now. I'll come back to Anthony Joshua another day in terms of, who he could likely face, but just some initial thoughts from the news that is floating around. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.